worked in a public school in the city of São Cristóvão. It's in the state of Sergipe, the smallest state in Brazil. And I have half and half. Half groups from middle school and half groups in high school. So this activity is about simple past tense with regular verbs, because I don't want to mix regular and irregular because they often get confused about both. So firstly, I started teaching simple past with regular verbs. So this is lesson plan. The purpose of this project is to teach simple past with regular verbs in a large and multi-level 8th grade in a group of nearly 45 students, at most 50. Right, so the audience is 8th grade, which they're about 13 years old maybe. And the point is how to teach simple past tense. So as a warm-up, which would be at the beginning, the teacher asks the students what they did last weekend. So, hey guys, what did you do last weekend? Let me show you an example. I visited my grandmother's hometown, so I have to write it on the board. I visited my grandmother. I fished. I fished with my friend. So I fished with a friend, and so I asked for answers from students. And as long as they answer, I will write the answers on the board, just to fix the verbs that express action in the past. So teacher writes the answers on the board. It using Blackboard and chalk because the school or work doesn't have so many technological resources. So, and it will take about 5 minutes, just a preview of what's going on. The first part is introduction. The teacher uses the example from the students and from himself, herself, the teacher, to explain the regular form of the simple past. So, so you might be willing to ask me, but what if your students only mention irregular verbs? And then, so being aware of that, firstly, I'm supposed to write what I did last weekend. So, of course, I will choose sentences in the irregular verbs. So, if my students don't come up with regular verbs, but my sentences are on the board, so I can explain them with my sentences, with the verbs I chose. So use the Blackboard and chalk and take about 15 minutes just to explain the D, ED, IND endings, and did for questions, didn't for negatives. So as they already know the rules of the simple past, let's follow the next step, the activity. The teacher gives a sheet of paper with 2 questions because we have only a 50 minute class, so have to be very, very brief. So, teacher gives a sheet of paper with 2 questions per student. The first one is for them to circle the verbs in the simple past, which are in the reading section, to check if they really understood the rules on how to form sentences in the past. And the second one is for them to create affirmative sentences in the simple past with verbs they would choose from a list. After finishing it, the teacher asks some students to read the sentences they wrote. They do this activity in groups of 4. This will take about 15 minutes. And in order to evaluate, I will play tic-tac-toe. Students have to say affirmative sentences in the simple past with the chosen verbs. Teacher divides the class in 2 groups. It can be boys against girls, or half group versus half group. And in the closer, as homework, students will have to interview 4 or 5 people with the question, what did you do last weekend? So they will seek for verbs in the past. I mean, regular verbs in the past. So this is the end of my project, but as an objective we have, by the end of the class, students will be able to identify in the text verbs in the simple past tense, regular ones, after practicing it in an exercise. To produce written and oral sentences in the simple past after practicing it. And to use verbs in the simple past in answers from an interview. Reflections in the book. I chose the book Teaching Large Multi-Level Classes by Natalie Hess. So I selected the book because I work with large classes with about 40 to 50 students. They're noisy and also multi-leveled, but just a few of them know a little of English. At the moment of the activity, students with no ability with language usage will have the opportunity to ask, to share with their more fluent classmates for help. According to Hess, students can learn as much from one another as they learn from the teacher. In addition to this, Hess says that it is only natural that the more able students quickly assume the role of teacher assistant. So it is pretty normal that one of our students do a more free relationship with a classmate rather than with myself. So it's good when join a weak one with a strong one in terms of knowledge. So that they can share answers, information, and something else. Okay, that's all.
Questions for Daniel? Questions, comments?
Daniel, and there are irregular verbs, and did you think about to work with them after they do this, or you focus on simple past of regular verbs?
Regular verbs, but as I'm afraid of them to make this distinction, I can print the list of the regular verbs for them to keep with them. So keep it away with you because our next appointment will be these verbs. So don't use these verbs in this activity. So this is only for regular, which have the end like in ed, id. So don't worry about those verbs in this list. It's just for you not to use it right now because it's the appointment for our next class, maybe.
At the end, after working regular and irregular, maybe you could do a running game. I did with my students, like I say the verb in the present, and they have to run and write the past form in 2 teams, two groups, and then you check the ones that spelled and have the correct ones. They really enjoy it. They really like to do that.
And one very important thing I forgot to mention, but I remember now, is the pronunciation about the T, D, ED ending. It's very important for them. Okay? Any more questions?
No, I don't have a question, but I would like to give you an idea because it's something I do in my classes when I teach regular verbs. When I teach past tense, in fact, not only regular but also irregular verbs, I do a kind of memory game. I produce the cards, big ones, this size, with the verb in the infinitive and then the other with the past tense. And I spread the cards on the floor, and the students are around, and then we play memory, like a memory game. But then they have to, the pairs are the infinitive and the past tense of the word. And they like doing it because it's a big game on the floor, and then they are all trying to get the more pairs they can.
I think it's better to do it when I explain the irregular verbs, so
Yes.
we can mix both regular and irregular verbs.
I also do something similar, but I found on the internet they have like a memory game that you can print in small cards, and I managed to make one copy of the game to each of my students, in order that they could take it home and they could play, you know. First of all, I gave them the paper. I didn't cut it. I just gave them, and they were supposed to read it, okay? And they were supposed to identify the meaning of the verbs, because in this case, though, it was only irregular verbs, but it can be regular also. So I wanted to assure they knew all the meaning of the verbs, and they had to play the memory game in class. But in order to get the pair, they had to create a sentence. So, because then it's just playing, okay, not playing for playing, but anyway, they had to make a sentence. No, I went to my grandma's hometown, as you said. Okay, is it all right? Yes, it is. So I take the pair, because it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of assess them if they really are able to produce, and you can help. It's just an idea.
Yeah, and if you don't have time, or if you have lots of students, you can ask them to create the cards.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
So they can create the game, you know, they have to look for the words in their material, so they're reviewing the content, looking for the words.
also,
Good idea.
yes. They can exchange verbs, like I have verbs you don't have. So let's sit together and, you know, build up our vocab.
Really enjoy to make this.
Yes,
art.
it's awesome.